Good morning, everybody. Welcome to 5783 Tofshin Pei Gimel. I've always been used to every year hearing, like mnemonics about what the acronym of the new year might mean. Tofshin Pei Gimel. Tehei Shnas, I don't know, Pidyon Gula, or whatever it is. That we should have a beautiful year. But I was thinking that Tehei Shnas Palm Gardens, that we should have a great year here in Palm Beach Gardens. And it's fantastic that we're starting off with the tropical storm. But you know what? This is my first one, my first storm in Florida, and it's not as bad as they were saying. It's not as bad. It seems to be that we'll all be okay in the end. Okay, so anyway, welcome to 5783. And today I'm going to tell you why today is a fast day. And we're going to learn a little bit about the fast of Gedalia. So for a shortened lesson. So every single year, actually, the first weekday of the year, right after Rosh Hashanah, the third day of Tishrei is the fast of Gedalia. And it's basically commemorating the death of the leader of Judea, the tragic death of the leader of Judea, and the terrible, tragic aftermath that happened because of this death. So, in brief, Tzom Gedalia is a dawn to dusk fast. That's the first thing I got to know about it. There's two types of fasts that we generally celebrate in Judaism. Celebrate, I don't know if that's the correct word, but there are two types of fasts. There's long fasts and short fasts. The long fasts start the night before, or from evening till evening, which would mean that we would have started last night as soon as it was dark. That's what we do on Yom Kippur. It's a full 24-hour fast. That's also what we do on Tisha B'Av, a full 24-hour fast. But most of the fasts that we have throughout the Jewish year are not 24-hour fasts. They are just dawn to dusk fasts. So the fast of Gedalia is also a dawn to dusk fast. It started this morning at dawn and will end this evening. And it's observed the day after Rosh Hashanah every single year. If the day after Rosh Hashanah is Shabbat, then it's observed on the fourth day of Tishrei, which would be the Sunday. And again, it's commemorating, I guess that's a much better word than celebrating, it's commemorating the tragic death of Gedaliah, the governor of Judea. And the first thing we do on that day, on the day of Gedaliah, is we start the morning prayers with the Selichot, which is an extra 20 minutes of prayer, and then we start. So this morning, prayers started at 7 o'clock and not at 7:30 because we did the extra slichot first. So let's first of all talk about what a fast day is all about, because it's a very interesting concept, the fact that we even fast. Like what does it help? What does fasting actually do? And how does it make things better? If there's like a tragedy which happened and you're trying to remember it, what does punishing yourself by not eating help? So the way we got to look at fast days is that a fast day is both commemorative, but it's also like a warning bell. It's a reminder for us to be on our best behavior. It's almost like a reminder of what our goal is, and it's kind of like a refocus. Let's make sure that we're doing our job properly. And the fasting kind of puts us in that focus. It's like a great reminder that we have to be more serious, that we shouldn't just focus on the everyday things of life, like the food and the drink and the mundanity and the regular just eating and drinking and self-service, but we should focus on more spiritual things. So not eating itself doesn't actually accomplish the goal of a fast day. The reason we fast on a fast day is so that we could focus on prayer and on the right things. The time that it takes to eat, we should notice that we're not eating. I'll explain it like this. I was thinking, imagine if suddenly we found out, or they found a way, that human beings don't need to eat anymore. We just don't need to eat anymore. We're completely covered by Mother Nature. Human beings just live on, and we don't need food for energy. Imagine that was the case. It would take a very long time getting used to, I think, because just part of our culture and part of our schedule is eating. We take time to eat. We eat 3 square meals a day, or we're supposed to, right? Sometimes the day gets too busy and we forget to, but really we should be eating 3 square meals a day. I think that if people wouldn't be eating, if people didn't need to eat in order to survive, mothers, specifically Jewish mothers, would be serving their kids 3 square nothings a day. Everybody would have to sit around the table and not eat, because it's just embedded in human culture that we got to eat. So a fast day, what a fast day does is incredible. It's almost like a shock. We're not eating today. Breakfast time arrives and you don't go home for breakfast. Lunchtime arrives and you're hungry, but you don't eat. And then dinner time comes and the same thing. We can't eat for a few more hours until the fast comes out. That's supposed to be, well then, instead of eating, let me take that time to reevaluate, to meditate, to take a few minutes to think about the purpose of why I usually eat. Because a lot of people unfortunately eat to live and then just live to eat. It's a vicious cycle. There's no purpose behind it. But we're supposed to be a bit more conscious than that. And that's what a fast day is all about. So I just wanted to give that introduction before we describe this particular fast day. Because this particular fast day, the Fast of Gedalia, is not a particularly strict one. And it's not all people keep it. I mean, not because they're not religious, but even religious people don't all hold of this fast of the Fast of Gedalia, because it's interesting that it's like there's lots of tragic things that have happened, and we don't really have a fast day for all of them. However, the tragedy which happened on the Fast of Gedalia was very important because of what it caused. It wasn't just the tragedy of his death, but it was also the aftermath of what happened. So let me give you some historical background as who Gedaliah was and what happened. So after the Babylonians destroyed the Holy Temple in Jerusalem and exiled many Jews in the year 423 BCE, okay, they appointed Gedaliah, the son of Achikam, as governor of the remaining Jews in the Holy Land. Incidentally, you should know that since the Jews went up to the Holy Land with Joshua, in other words, after we were redeemed from Egypt as a nation with Moses, and then like 40 years later we went into Israel. Since then, there has never been a time when there were no Jews in Israel, and this has rock solid archaeological evidence since the times of David. Before David, we don't really have any archaeological evidence, but just remember that David is only 200 years after Joshua, like 203. David was really right in the beginning, and we have obviously we got biblical evidence, but archaeological evidence is cool because it's really undisputed by anybody. You don't have to be a believer to believe in archaeological evidence, because it's just rock solid proof, literally. So anyway, so there's always been Jews in Israel, even in the most horrific times of exile. There've always been Jews in Israel, and Israel has also not really been ever owned by a particular nation other than the Jews. It's been part of different empires, but if you just take a look at Israel's history, it's never belonged. Like there was never a nation called Palestine. It was called Palestine. The name of the place was a region called Palestine, and it was actually named that way by the Romans on purpose, so that it wouldn't be called Israel. It's kind of to question mark our ties to the land. But there was never a Palestinian people or any other people which laid claim to the land particularly. It was always like part of a bigger colonization, part of a bigger empire, but never a specific nation's land. So either way, there were always Jews in Israel, even during the times of the most horrific persecution, and including in this period of time, about 400 years BCE. And so there was a Jewish governor in charge of the Jews in the land at the time. His name was Gedaliah ben Achikam. And the Jews who had taken refuge in the surrounding lands of Ammon, Moab, and Edom heard of his appointment and started returning to Judea to join his group. Here was a man who was granted power by the non-Jewish authorities, and it looked very promising because, it wasn't like the Jews who were taking refuge in Ammon and Moab and Edom were leading the greatest lives. They were in exile, and they were being persecuted in exile. But the reason they had gone there is because at that time, Israel was even worse. It was way worse persecution. But since the appointment of this man, Gedaliah ben Achikam, there wasn't such bad persecution. So they heard the rumor of his appointment and they started joining. And this group was like, I guess, the last remnant of the once mighty Judea. When we're talking about Judea, I'm referring to the kings of Judea, including David and Solomon. We were talking about the kingdom of Israel. This is the last little remnant towards the end of exile. This is the group of Gedaliah ben Achikam. And under his wise and pious leadership, they tiled, planted, and cultivated this ravaged land back to some level of its original strength, back to some level of health. Not saying that they got it back to the level that it was under like David and Solomon, but they definitely got somewhere with it. So basically, here was a man that was carrying the last remnant of hope before our exile actually happened. Here was a man that actually, that gave us that hope that Jews might, yes, still continue to thrive in Israel. Now, prior to Rosh Hashanah, again in the 422 BCE, Gedaliah received word that a certain Jew, certain man, Ishmael ben Netaniah, that was his name, he was jealous of his position of power. As it goes, that's how Jews are. Somebody told me recently, a pretty influential man who comes to our shul, successful man. He told me that he's done a lot of philanthropic things over his years. He's really, and I know that he has. He's done incredible things. He's generous, and he's changed the platitude of a lot of people's lives and a lot of organizations. It's incredible. He says there's two things which he never got involved in, and this he made sure to never get involved. Number one, shul boards. Number two, HOAs. He says all it is positions of jealousy, all talk and no do. Anyway, this man, Yishmael ben Achikam, Gedaliah ben Achikam was the governor of the remaining Jews in that time period. But this Yishmael ben Netaniah, of course, was jealous of the position. Not that he had any better plan on leading the Jewish people. Not that he had a problem with anything that Gedaliah was actually doing, and not that he had a better plan than him. It's just that he was jealous of the position of power. He wanted to be the most influential person in the land. And because he was jealous of his position of power, obviously he started justifying it by disagreeing with his policies, because that's how it always is. That's really why politics is relevant to all of us. Honestly, deep down, the reason we're all interested in politics is because we're jealous. It's the way it is. It's just that's my take on it. I'm not going to quote anybody else on that, but that's how I feel. I feel that the reason we all care about who's in charge of this and who the leader is and who the chairman is and who the president is, and we talk about every move they make that was stupid. You know what? Imagine if you were president, or if you were in a big position of power. Do you think you wouldn't make mistakes? Of course you would make mistakes. It's part of life. And especially when your actions have so many ramifications, right? There's just so much decision making to make. I don't think any of us could claim that we could be a better leader than people that we take issue with. It's just that seeing as somebody did take the position, now that they took it, they've got heavy responsibility. And us as outsiders who are not making the decisions kind of have the prerogative to notice the mistakes and say, well, excuse me, this could be harmful. Anyway, often it comes from jealousy. It comes from like, well, all these people in the positions of power, look what they're doing with their power, So it might be coming from jealousy. Anyway, this guy, Ishmael ben Netaniah, was definitely coming from jealousy. He definitely wanted the position of power himself. And that's what led him to start, questioning Gedaliah's tactics. It's not that he had an issue with the tactics and then he wanted to overtake because he had a better plan, but rather he was jealous of the position. And because he was jealous of the position, when you're jealous of somebody, you can't find anything good in what they're doing. Just how it is. Once you start acting negatively towards somebody, once you start feeling negative towards somebody, it becomes a vicious cycle. One thing leads to the next. And you start disagreeing with you can't find anything good about them. So that was the case with Yishmael ben Netaniah. But Yishmael, the son of Netaniah, did not like anything that Gedaliah was doing. He took issue with every move that Gedaliah made. And because he was so dissatisfied and jealous, um, especially, he was also, one thing that he was really worried about. His biggest claim against Gedaliah was that Gedaliah had a tactical alliance with the Babylonians. And so Ishmael decided, okay, simple, quick fix. What I'm going to do is I'm going to kill Gedaliah, and I'm going to take the leadership position for myself. And so, but unfortunately, what happened was Gedaliah was too naive to see this. He was so good-hearted, and he was like historically like such a unique leader. There was like nobody who took issue with him, and he knew that this guy, you know, Yishmael ben Netanya had some problems with him, but he wasn't prepared to fight him in a war or anything. And so, because he was very trusting, he refused to believe that Yishmael would act like this, and he restrained those who wanted to kill Yishmael. He said, like, no, leave him, On Rosh Hashanah, Yishmael came to Gedaliah with 10 men to celebrate Rosh Hashanah. That was what they said. While they were eating together, Yishmael and his men got up and killed Gedaliah, as well as all the other Jewish men and Babylonian soldiers who were present. This act of evil was followed by more bloodshed. It also caused the Jews to flee to Egypt, effectively ending the prospects of Jewish settlement in Israel. Again, obviously, there were some who remained, but it took that tiny little ember of hope that the Jews would continue to live on, that the kingdom of Judea, there was like this ember of the kingdom of Judea, and it wasn't really shining, but they were trying to light it. And this is basically when it was stomped. And there was no body of unity anymore from with which to continue the kingdom of Judea, and the Jews were dispersed into exile. And because of that, that's really what we're commemorating today. That's what this fast is about. It's not one man's story of one leader killed by a jealous man. It's the real beginning of our exile. It was at that moment. And if you look at Jewish history, I've been learning a lot of Jewish history, especially with the teens. I see that Miriam is on this morning. Good morning, Miriam. And I'm teaching Miriam's son. He's one of the teens who comes to our weekly C-Teen university classes. And we're learning about Israel. And among other things that we're learning about Israel in that course, and it's for college credits, it's really cool. But among other things that we're learning, besides for like why Israel is important, we've been learning a lot of history, modern history about what happened just before 1948. But actually, more importantly, the context of the Jewish connection to the land over like recorded history. And so if you look at the whole like connection of, it's not that long. It's like sometimes you think like Joshua happened all those thousands of years ago. It's like a different world, a different universe, but it wasn't. It was in the last few thousand years. It's like it's really not so long. And if you just see what happened stage after stage, and how there was always Jewish hope and always Jewish people there, it really makes it feel so alive and relevant today also. But the bottom line is that although there was always Jews there was not always a Jewish nation, a Jewish country. And for the last, until 1948, there wasn't, from about this stage of 20 years BCE. I mean, 420 years BCE. There were little stints of Jewish like power, but nothing major. It's just been hope and one nation taking from the. It's basically between wars the Jews had like some level of power. So anyway, that is the reason for the fast. In memory of Gedaliah's tragic death and its disastrous aftermath, we fast every year, not on Rosh Hashanah, because you can't fast on Rosh Hashanah. It's a mitzvah to be happy and to celebrate on Rosh Hashanah. It is a Yom Tov, and it says in the Torah about all the Chagim, v'samachta b'chagecha, you have to be happy and on your festivals, and happy denotes eating and drinking. That's what the Shulchan Aruch teaches us. We fast every year on the 3rd of Tishrei, the day after Rosh Hashanah. And again, if the 3rd of Tishrei falls out on Shabbat, the fast is postponed to the 4th of Tishrei. Like other minor fasts, it begins at dawn and ends at nightfall, and working is permitted. During or before morning prayers, as we did this morning, we add a special slichot prayer, basically penitential prayers, basically prayers of sorry, prayers of teshuvah, and we shout out the 13 attributes of God's mercy, as we do on Rosh Hashanah and on days of fast. Okay, and then during both morning and afternoon prayers, the Torah is taken out, and we read the portion which we usually read on fast days. This morning, Keith, you're looking at me like, "Hey, we didn't take the Torah out. We didn't have a minyan. That's why. But if we would have, we right." Tzom Gedalia is one of the 4 fasts that will end when Mashiach comes, because it's all about exile. So when exile ends, may it happen soon, the fast of Gedalia will end too. So, wow, that's basically the short version of, no, that's actually the details of what happened today. Um, now I'm actually seeing people's comments. Garrett's good morning quote this morning is, row, row, row your boat, good morning. All right. Winston, that's because there's of the storm, because you're in Indonesia. And wow, we got like an international presence here today. We got Indonesia, Florida, Australia. Very nice. Nice to see you all. Have a nice and easy, great fast. And have a great week. And it's almost Shabbat already. Shabbat Shalom. We'll see you all. Yeah.